And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick here with Alix Steel to take you through the closing bell. It's our global simulcast now. Scarlet Fu in the TV studio, Massar and Tim Stenovec in the radio booth as we welcome our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms, including our partnership with YouTube as we parse the most crucial moments of the day. A lower open for stocks, but it looks like, Carol, if this holds, we'll have a higher close for most of the major indices.
Yeah, just barely, right? You look at the S&P 500, kind of an even split here, but little gains overall. Right now, we just had the S&P dip into the red. So, really just trying to eke out a gain, but it looks like it'll be a flat market for the most part.
We spent a lot of our program talking about the implications of what happens tonight when it comes to the economy and when it comes to the markets.
What's happening tonight?
Well, at 9 o'clock, the CNN presidential debate takes place between President Biden, former President Trump. I do expect quite a bit to come up about the economy, especially when it comes to inflation. Obviously, markets will not be open during that time, but we'll maybe we'll hear more about policies from either president.
Policies?
Yeah, okay. Economic policies.
Or maybe we'll wait until we get core PCE at 8:30 a.m. on Friday to answer some questions.
But we all know what that's going to look like. We've been, have our pencils out doing our calculations, right?
Yeah, but don't we also know what the debate's going to be like? Come on now. It's just going to be the show. But what I do think is interesting, guys, tomorrow in the second quarter, first half of the year, sell the winners, buy the losers. I don't know. I think there could be some liquidity that comes in tomorrow. That could be exciting.
We've seen that rebalancing going on right now over the past week as a lot of people, have some big winners that they have to sell, maybe take some profits off the table. The question is, where do those profits go? Do they pile back into equities and continue this rally, or do they go somewhere else? Screen across the screen here on this Thursday afternoon. Modest gains to be sure, but I think some investors will take it. A Dow Jones Industrial Average right now up about 0.1% as we wait for these numbers to settle. The S&P 500 up by about a similar amount. We should point out at one point in the day, in the intraday, it did trade above its record high. It is going to close below that, though, on this day. The NASDAQ Composite up about 53 points or 0.3%, while the Russell 2000, that's your outperformer on the day, guys, up 20 points or 1% even.
All right, to the S&P 500, we'll continue there. 284 names to the upside, actually gaining some ground today, Scarlet. 217 to the downside, 2 unchanged.
All right, let's take a look at the IMAP, which shows us how the different sectors are performing, and a pretty mixed showing here. REITs have now climbed to the top, gaining 0.9%. Consumer discretionary, also big gainer, and that's really on the back of Caesar. And communication services up about 0.75%. On the flip side, you've got consumer staples, and that's dragged down by Walgreens, healthcare. Another decliner, although it's pared some of its losses because of CVS. Interesting that CVS and Walgreens are in different sectors. Materials and financials also lower.
All right, let's get to some of the individual gainers. So here's some outperformance, folks. Maybe investors giving up a little bit on the chip sector here, but if you look at something like a Salesforce or Palo Alto Networks, really some outperformance. Salesforce up almost 4% in today's session. You see this among the top gainers in some of the major equity averages. Move on to Palo Alto Networks. Also a gainer, up about 5%. So just some sector rotation going on here. Not necessarily any specific news on these names, but nonetheless, really some outperformance there. BlackBerry, how about a blast from the past there? This one up at its highs, almost 17% in today's session, finishing the day with about 11% gain. Yes, it's a $2 a share stock. About
Is that Canadian or U.S.?
U.S. Oh, Canadian dollars? I don't,
Wow.
All right.
I thought you knew to ignore me by now, Carol.
Rude, Romaine.
It's a $1.5 billion stock. I'm assuming that's in U.S. dollars.
It's in dollars. It's in U.S. dollars.
It's in U.S. dollars. Thank you very much. Rallying after the company reported first quarter revenue that came in ahead of estimates. CIBC upgraded the recommendation on the stock, noting that the better than forecast print and conservative but achievable second quarter and full year guidance. So they like that. Should point out Raymond James and TD Cowen, lowering their price targets on the stock. And once again, just reminding everybody that is U.S. dollars. McCormick, something completely different. This was a top gainer in the S&P 500, up about 4% today. Spice Maker, of course, reported second quarter adjusted EPS exceeded the average analyst estimate. Company's net sales also came in roughly in line with Wall Street expectations. All right, so some really big outperformers there.
Okay, you got the outperformers. I got the underperformers. I do want to start with shares of Micron Technology dropping after the forecast disappointed investors who were looking for a bigger payoff from AI mania, down 7% today. Fiscal fourth quarter sales will be $7.4 billion to $7.8 billion. The average analyst estimate was actually $7.58 billion. Some projections were above $8 billion, so it showed how investors had really high expectations for those numbers that came after the bell yesterday. We did see also shares higher by about 60% going into the print yesterday. So again, investors had high expectations. We did see profit come in at $1.08 per share versus a projection of $1.02. Walgreens Boots Alliance. Biggest decline today, going all the way back to 1980. Shares falling by more than 22%. It's actually now trading at levels last seen in 1998. The company slashed its guidance due to a worsening retail environment. It announced it would close significantly more stores. Its new CEO is looking to turn the business around. In addition to shuttering locations, management said it would make more organizational changes without specifying if there would be further job cuts. The company has had a rocky few years with turnover in the executive ranks. It's been a challenging retail climate for the company. Shares falling by more than 22%. Also on the decline today, Levi's shares at one point falling the most ever, though closing at their worst since 2023, falling 15.4%. The company did report quarterly sales that fell just short of estimates. Again, high expectations. Shares were about 40% higher through yesterday's close before these numbers came out. So investors certainly had high expectations. Revenue coming in at $1.44 billion in the fiscal second quarter versus the average analyst estimate of $1.45 billion. So just an ever so slight miss there. Sales in the Americas were strong, fell short in Europe and Asia. Alex.
Yep, and also denim's like having that big moment, so that those expectations were high. Let's go to the bond market for a second, guys. We saw a pretty strong bid, yields lower. The big news, though, was we got through a ton of supply this week. The 7-year actually went pretty well today, and then headed into tomorrow with the PCE, personal income and spending. I should point out that the BlackRock iShares long bond ETF had almost $3 billion in inflows on Monday. So you have to wonder what the positioning is like headed into the numbers tomorrow, plus the end of the quarter.
All right, guys, you know how we like to kind of get a good read on consumer sentiment. Sometimes it's like whether or not people are spending money to go to the movies. Well, having said that, it could also just be a sign of whether or not something is kind of good. And that brings us to a most-read story on the Bloomberg terminal. Kevin Costner's, his $100 million Western headed for the box office. And apparently, right now, the estimates are that maybe it might bring 12 to 20 million in over the weekend.
Did he learn nothing from Waterworld?
That's a good point. But before Waterworld,
Dances with Wolves.
Yeah, Dances with
true.
Wolves did more than $400 million in revenue. It was a $22 million production. Right. So, and he's been working on this since 1988, Alex. He actually put $38 million of his own money into the movie. So if he doesn't get sales up, could be hard to recoup the investment.
I'm actually intrigued that he took this on his own, and it really kind of shows you just how the economics of Hollywood are kind of lopsided here. But I mean, look, if you like westerns or you like Kevin Costner, I guess I don't know. I haven't seen the reviews on this thing, but
50% on
score on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, exactly.
Not good.
Not
50,
good.
5-0.
Not good.
Yeah. Well, also having the words Chapter 1 in the title is not encouraging.
Also, literally, didn't he make this movie? I understand Dances with Wolves had a different premise, but he made the movie, right? That already happened. I don't need to see another one with Kevin Costner.
He really likes this genre.
He likes, right? Yellowstone, right? That was so popular. He's not coming back for the last season, but it's really kind of interesting. So we'll see. Something to see over the weekend. What do you guys got?
Okay, so we're looking at Fisker. So this is really interesting also. So you could buy a Fisker car, right, for about $70,000 in EV. Now, that company has since gone bankrupt, and that's creating a lot of problems for some of the buyers. For example, you can trade it in. One guy traded his $70,000 almost new car in for $23,000. If you want to get your car serviced, it's really hard to get somebody on the phone because you don't go to a traditional dealership. And because they're in bankruptcy, they let a lot of people go. That's rough.
Yeah. The after-sale service is always the problem, right?
Yeah. And it's not just Fisker. You saw the same thing with Polestar, and you've seen, even with Tesla, you've had some of these complaints here. But it raises the question, at least for those companies that aren't well established, like a Tesla or a legacy automaker, if you're buying one of these cars, you really are kind of taking a gamble that they're going to actually be around, in 2 or 3 years when you really need them. Yeah,
I talked about this actually with a friend on Saturday who I saw over the weekend. He has a Rivian, and I asked him his thoughts on it. He said he loves it, but he's a little concerned that it might become a brick one day if the company doesn't survive. That was before the $5 billion infusion from VW, but it's certainly something that's on the mind of folks who have EVs from startups, no question.
Yeah, it's a really good point. All right, guys, that's a wrap. Our cross-platform coverage, radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals, we call it, the closing bell. We'll see you again, same time, same place tomorrow.